Greetings, and welcome to NewsDepth. My name is Mike Edelman. I'm the Director of Education at WVIZ PBS IdeaStream, located in Cleveland, Ohio. IdeaStream is Northeast Ohio's public media entity. We're comprised of two radio stations, WCPN and WCLV, CPN being a classical music station, and CLV being an NPR affiliate, and obviously WVIZ PBS, which is a television station. Today I'm here to talk to you about NewsDepth. NewsDepth is a locally produced news program targeting children in grades 4 through 6. But before I dive into what NewsDepth is and how it can be used in a classroom, I think it's best if I show you a little bit of what NewsDepth looks like. So with that, I'm going to jump over to an exciting reel.
Coming up each week on NewsDepth, we break down the week's biggest stories from weather to world events, plus our reoccurring special segments linked to Ohio's new learning standards. We engage with students through weekly polls and write-in questions, and it's all just a whole lot of learning fun for you and for us. NewsDepth is now.
The State of the Union has been, well, stated. Hey everybody, I'm Rick Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us. President Donald Trump addressed the nation February 6th, about 1 week after he'd originally planned to speak. That's because Mr. Trump opted to wait until the government shutdown ended to give this year's State of the Union. The State of the Union is a speech given before Congress yearly by the President of the United States. It's an opportunity for the president to talk about what he wants to prioritize and usually includes an update on how the nation's economy is going. The speech is actually required by the U.S. Constitution. It's in Article 2, Section 3. He shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. Across the globe in Greenland this summer, a small town had a huge visitor. For almost 2 weeks, a giant iceberg sat on the sea floor, looming over the remote fishing village in western Greenland. Phil Black traveled to the isolated community and met villagers who say they're used to living with some of the Arctic's biggest icebergs, but were particularly worried about this one, and you'll see why.
Very few people get to see this, the beautiful, hazardous waters of Greenland's west coast. A place where icebergs are often vastly larger than any ship trying to avoid them.
Meanwhile, in the South American country of Venezuela, there is debate over who even is the president of the country. You might be wondering how that's possible. Shouldn't be too difficult to know who's in charge, right? Well, follow along with me here. Back in 2018, an election was held, and the results declared that the current leader at the time, Nicolas Maduro, was going to remain in his position. In January, a swearing-in ceremony for Maduro was actually held. But folks opposed to Maduro say the election was unfair. If this is the case, Venezuela's constitution says the leader of their legislature, Juan Guaido, will serve as the interim president until new elections can be held. Now, support for Guaido is growing, and people are comparing him to former U.S. President Barack Obama.
You might be surprised to hear that even states get into quarrels from time to time. Well, rather than settle it with a game of rock, paper, scissors, they head to this place.
The Supreme Court of the United States,
or SCOTUS for short, is at the very top of the nation's judicial branch. Inside, a group of 9 judges, also called justices, decide cases about big players like states, ambassadors, and even the federal government.
Whoa! That looks like a damsel in distress if I ever saw one. Looks like she could use a hand, or an arm, or, you know, like 2 arms. Ugh. Well, maybe I better leave it to the professionals. I'm not the first one to mess things up like that. There have been some pretty famous examples where everyday folks have tried to fix art on their own, like a woman who tried to touch up this painting of Jesus. Her version, well, didn't turn out too good. Saving art from deteriorating or making it look new again is what we call conservation. Take this.
Unless you like plugging your nose, you're lucky we don't live on Uranus. Why? Well, because the 7th planet from the sun is in a stinky situation. It smells like rotten eggs. Nasty. How do we know this? Well, NASA scientists made the discovery through a high-tech sniff test, which they revealed in the journal Nature Astronomy. Until now, scientists have only speculated about the gases that lie in the blue-green clouds of Uranus. From the looks of it, you might imagine it smells like cotton candy or blueberries. But nope. NASA scientists in Hawaii used their Gemini telescope to check out the situation. How do you use a telescope to see a smell? Well, the 26-foot telescope is equipped with
a near-infrared integral field spectrometer.
Ohio played a big role in the development of cars. Get ready to rev your engines, because I'm going to race through Ohio's long car history. While the car itself wasn't invented in Ohio, we certainly helped shape it into the vehicle we know today. This includes the invention of the first gas-powered American car. In 1891, John William Lambert of Ohio City built the vehicle in secret.
Open the page, you get literal gasps.
In the basement of his Olmsted Falls home, author Keith Allen puts Exactably to paper. The tools of the trade are a little different when you're working on a pop-up book.
I'm a paper engineer. I work on greeting cards at American Greetings, and then I also make pop-up books. I love the challenge of a pop-up book. I love the challenge of having something fold completely flat and then making it come alive when you open it up.
Keith recently published his second book, What a Mess, a pop-up misadventure.
Thanks, Doug. Now, we want your thoughts on the California bills in this week's poll. Do you support the anti-pop bills? Head on over to our website to choose either yes, I think they promote healthy choices, or no, they really won't stop people from drinking pop. Here in Ohio, by the way, most food is not taxed, but pop is. That's because the Ohio Department of Taxation does not consider soft drinks to be food. Odd, but true. Now, how about the poll we took last week? We told you about protesters who wanted to close a marine park in Arizona. Well, 80% of you agreed with the protesters, saying the park should close. Since last week. How about this? Our tweet of the week. It shows off some futuristic travel. Mrs. Wallert from Mulberry Elementary sent over this snap of students using virtual reality goggles to visit places of worship and religious festivals. They got to learn all about world religions. Sweet. Well, they made us want to take you to some cool religious spots, too. So let's start right here in the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE. According to the U.S. Department of State, last week, we asked you to write to us about a different story dealing with the rights of property owners. We told you about a group of Louisiana residents who the government offered to move out of their village as it disappears beneath rising waters. Let's see what you had to say by opening up our inbox. Let's start with Quinn from Mulberry Elementary. I think that the residents in Louisiana should not have to move. I think this because their ancestors lived there a long time ago and it could be a tradition. So the residents in Louisiana shouldn't have to move because they have their own idea of what they want to do. Here's a letter from Phoenix at Grant Elementary, Lakewood. I think that they should have the choice to stay or move because if they want to have a house full of water, okay, but they might have an interest in the water or what's in the water. And thanks to the teachers at Olmsted Falls Intermediate for sharing this week's A+ with us. This week, the award goes to the school's 30 fifth graders who are building understanding and appreciation for their classmates with disabilities. The students participate in a district-wide program called Helping Hands. The group works together to educate, empower, and embrace students with disabilities. In January, the district held Celebrating Differences Week. They recognized students with different disabilities such as vision impairment, autism, Down syndrome, and the less visible ones like dyslexia and anxiety. They created a 2-day simulation event that allowed 4th and 5th graders and their teachers to participate in activities to help them see what it's like to experience school with a disability. One rotation was called Walking in Someone Else's Shoes. We heard from intervention specialist Erin DeForgis, who is also the school's Helping Hands advisor, along with co-teacher Cindy Zahorchak. Ms. DeForge tells us the event was new to our building this year and a great success. All the kids and teachers not only learned but seemed to enjoy the simulations as well. Well, we're glad to see more schools celebrating differences in innovative ways, so here's an A+ to the Helping Hands at Olmsted Falls Intermediate School. Now, teachers, make sure you're sending in your A+ submissions to us. You can email them to newsdepth@ideastream.org. We love sharing what your kiddos are up to. Now, I heard Newscat's been taking a few too many brain breaks while looking for this week's petting zoo, so let's check in on her. Just as I suspected, napping on the job. That's not a brain break. There we go, get up. That's better. Oh, wow, she found a story about a goat who's been voted the mayor. That's nuts. To find out how this Billy will be leading the town, click the Petting Zoo button on our website.
New episodes post on ideastream.org every Thursday and air on WVIZ PBS IdeaStream Fridays at 1 and Saturdays at 8 in the morning.
So as I said, that's a quick overview of some of the offerings from NewsDepth, and it also gives you a nice feel of what NewsDepth looks like. As I said, it's our intent that NewsDepth can be used as an instructional tool and a nice, safe way to expose your students to the world around them through current events. As we take a deeper dive into what NewsDepth is, let's consider a few tidbits about the program. First and foremost, NewsDepth is designed for all learners. It places an emphasis on digital literacy, digital media, and it's tied to the Ohio Learning Standards Anchor Standards, specifically in the area of English language arts. All of NewsDepth's offerings are available on the web. The main goal of NewsDepth is to be educational. First and foremost, we place a high priority in instructional relevance. Typically, each story that we offer through each weekly episode is tied to Ohio Learning Standards by our education team. Typically speaking, each story can be linked to one or more standards, with the overarching idea that all stories can be used to support the ELA anchor standards, specifically in the areas of communication. Secondly, we're hoping to have a digital connection to learning. As I shared previously, NewsDepth is available on the web and has multiple opportunities for students to interact with the NewsDepth team through web-based interfaces. And we'll get into that later. And thirdly, we're very proud that NewsDepth has been recognized by several industry organizations. First and foremost, we've won 2 consecutive Parents' Choice Gold Awards and multiple Emmy Awards over the last several seasons. NewsDepth's audience has a few areas of focus. First and foremost, we focus on students of all abilities and in all content areas. While primarily the show targets students in grades 4 through 6, we have anecdotal feedback from teachers who use it up through high school, specifically in the areas of science and social studies with some of our special segments. Again, we'll get to that later. We also place an emphasis on being able to focus on all content areas. We have been able to feature fine arts, performing arts, social studies, science, English language arts, and mathematics. NewsDepth is also very friendly for the family. Again, with anecdotal feedback, we've heard from numerous adults in the Cleveland area that they prefer to watch NewsDepth to their traditional news broadcast. And again, adults enjoy NewsDepth. So how do we make NewsDepth? Where does it come from? Well, first and foremost, it's locally produced here in Cleveland, Ohio. It's locally reported. All of the on-air personalities residing in the Cleveland area and are all employed by IdeaStream. We also are known to feature student submissions. So any students out there who have any good leads, let us know. We can feature you in our A+ segment. Again, more on that later. And we also have a wonderful relationship with CNN. CNN provides us with a number of video packages specifically to support international news and national news. Today's NewsDepth offerings are digital first. Many of you may know that NewsDepth is now entering its 51st season on the air. When it was originally produced, it was solely a broadcast event. However, knowing how students learn and knowing the dynamics of the school setting, particularly in this time of COVID, we now place an emphasis on being accessible digitally. The NewsDepth website, ideastream.org/newsdepth, contains a number of archived segments, archived episodes, and a number of instructional resources that can be of assistance in the classroom. The production is designed specifically to be appealing to children. It's our hope that it's visually engaging, fast-paced, and that the content is relevant to today's student. As I mentioned, we have a number of special segments. The special segments run the gamut from focusing on politics, to science, to the arts. We'll go through each one of these special segments and I'll give you a broad overview of what you can expect. Know Ohio focuses on Ohio history. So those of you who have responsibilities for 4th grade social studies, this might be a useful instructional tool for you. It focuses on a number of celebrities from Ohio, a number of political leaders from Ohio, and a variety of other interesting facts related to Ohio and Ohio history. Spot on Science focuses on, you guessed it, science. Typically, we will feature local experts in a variety of fields. In this upcoming season, I can promise you that there will be features on genetics and poisonous plants. That's just a preview. The Buckeye Beat gives a whirlwind tour of what's going on across the state. Sketchbook focuses on arts, and Politics on Point, again, focuses on politics. Now, I will promise you, Politics on Point is nonpartisan and simply focuses on the functions of government, the processes of government, and any breaking news in the area of politics. You can expect to see a heavy emphasis on the upcoming inauguration, the election season, and the State of the Union address. Again, this is approached from a nonpartisan point of view and simply focuses on the functions and processes of government and a citizen's role in our participatory process. Easy for you to say. The types of news that we cover run the spectrum. You'll see many stories focused on local news through Buckeye Beat. You'll see regional news, state news, and state history, as I referenced, national news, and international news. Again, many of the national stories and international stories come through our partnership with CNN. Our state, regional, and local stories are typically all produced in-house by our own talent. As I shared earlier, we're placing an emphasis on student engagement and allowing your students to interact with our team. Each episode has a number of features that allow this. Firstly, every episode presents a poll question to students. This poll question could ask for their opinion on something. It could ask for their input on something. The NewsDepth A+ segment is typically where we see a number of student submissions. This is an opportunity for you to tell your story. This is an opportunity for students to celebrate their successes. And as I said, this is the opportunity for students to submit what's going on in their community. If you have any suggestions for a NewsDepth A+ segment, certainly feel free to reach out to me. I'll share my contact information a little bit later. The petting zoo with NewsCat is actually one of our more popular features. NewsCat, who is our correspondent to the animal world, will tell a number of heartwarming stories related to animals. I'm not going to lie, NewsCat is definitely our most popular team member. The NewsDepth inbox provides students with an opportunity to give us in-depth responses to questions we might pose. It might give students the opportunity to give us leads on stories and important things that are going on in their world. And it also gives students the opportunity to tell us about the world they're living in. Again, we're trying to place an emphasis on the opportunity for children to interact with our team through the digital world. Now, the question that we always get is, sure, you've won awards. Sure, you have decent ratings. Sure, you have a lot of web traffic. But do students actually like the show? What I'm about to share with you, I'm going to warn you, gets a little bit screechy. So bear with us. As you can see, Rick Jackson is quite the celebrity in many local Northeast Ohio schools. Every year, we try to either virtually or in person visit a number of schools. If you're interested in that, certainly, again, feel free to reach out. We've approached the development of the show through a human-centered design approach. Effectively, over the last several seasons, in order to expand our reach and add value to our services, we've reached out to a number of teachers throughout the state. And the feedback that they've given us has been invaluable. There are a number of opportunities for teachers to participate in NewsDepth. And again, I'll get to that later. But as you can see on this slide, we have a map of self-reported schools that are using NewsDepth. And you can see, obviously, there's clusters around the 3 major cities of Ohio. Often, throughout the season, we'll make an attempt to visit a number of schools. Some of those schools reach out to us, and some schools we reach out to. For instance, 4th grader Xavier A. in the lower corner made a difference in his community, and we decided to go celebrate that and feature him on NewsDepth. Our audience is an important one. We've put a lot of effort and time into listening to feedback to improve our product to increase its use in the classroom setting. Some of the instructional elements that you can look for in NewsDepth are as follows. Number 1, we place a heavy emphasis on the Ohio learning standards, specifically ELA, science, and social studies. Lately, we've also been integrating health content into the show, vocabulary content using specific terms and Tier 3 vocabulary words from the model curriculum, and nonfiction reading, as well as writing. Again, we're trying to have a value-added situation where you can use NewsDepth to support standards across a number of instructional areas. Some of the instructional resources that are available. All of the videos from the show are made available on the website. The show's transcripts are always made available. We develop worksheets to support each show. Typically, you can expect questions that tie to the specific stories in the show. We provide an episode guide. The episode guide gives teachers an overview of the episode, the standards that are hit through the episode, and additional information related to the stories. If you're a PBS Learning Media user, you can also find related videos and sources and resources using that particular platform. So how do we know we're making a difference? Well, last season we had over 1.2 million page views. We had 422 self-reported teachers using NewsDepth with approximately 16,000 students in 226 schools across the country. We have a few outliers. We have a school or two in Atlanta, Georgia, and we even have a school in Vancouver, Canada that watches weekly. And speaking of schools from across the country, we also receive a number of letters each week. We have about 300 student letters that hit our inboxes, and approximately 600 students per week cast votes in our poll. So what are the next steps? What can you do as a teacher? Well, first and foremost, you can give us a look on the web, www.ideastream.org/newsdepth. You can also participate in the NewsDepth Teacher Advisory Council. If you're using NewsDepth and want to provide feedback, that is a group that you can join. We're always looking for new members from across the state. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out. Additionally, this year, for the first time, in partnership with Ashland University, we're offering a course that a participant can earn graduate credit. This course goes over the use of digital media in the classroom, the use of NewsDepth in the classroom, and a number of instructional strategies that can support the Ohio Learning Standards. If you have any questions, I certainly encourage you to reach out. Again, my name is Mike Edelman. I'm the Director of Education for PBS IdeaStream in Cleveland, Ohio. And my contact information is as follows. And if you follow that web address, it will take you to this specific presentation. I thank you for your time. I wish you the best of luck in this uncertain school year. And again, if you have any questions regarding NewsDepth, certainly feel free to reach out at your convenience. Thank you, and have a good night.